Hey, family, welcome to another edition of the Serving Second podcast, where we celebrate leaders who may not always sit in that first chair, but help carry the weight, the shape, and the culture and move the mission forward. I'm your host, Dr. Toussaint Williams, and I'm so glad you joined us because today's guest is Kathy Eastwood. She's a CEO, a leadership strategist, and a creator of the E3 Leadership Code: Express, Engage, and Execute. Today, we're talking about human-first leadership, the behaviors that build trust, and how second-chair leaders can reduce friction, create momentum, and help teams perform at a higher level. This is going to be a practical podcast, and I'm so glad you're with us. So make sure that you subscribe if you haven't done so already, because we're going to dive in with Kathy Eastwood on the Serving Second podcast. Let's go. All right, so Kathy, welcome to the Serving Second podcast. I'm so glad you're with us. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Toussaint. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
I'm excited as well, just to have opportunity to talk before we got on going live and just getting a chance to unpack some of the wisdom that you have gleaned for so many years of leadership. We talked about you being a chief of staff in that journey. How did that align your journey to where you are right now?
I think chief of staff was probably one of my favorite jobs. And it was something where I was often tapped on the shoulder to help drive change.
Mm,
And, working for leaders that understood that they often were busy managing up and out, and they were looking for someone that could help drive things forward. And so what I'd often say is take the vision and help make sure and translate it into tangible results. And because that takes time, it takes repetition, it takes engagement. And, I think senior leadership sometimes is struggled with finding the time. So that's how I got, in that role of chief of staff. And it was my way of helping serve those leaders to help get their vision to fruition.
So you talked about going up and out. Was this something that this idea of being a chief of staff, was that something that you learned, or once you got into the role, you kind of learned how to navigate, the person that you're serving is going up and out, but you have to deal with the inner workings of the organization. Is that something you learned, or was that something you kind of felt innate that you just kind of naturally showed up and said, I can do this?
I think it was innate. I'm an operator.
Hmm.
So I'm trying to think like even my first role where it wasn't an official chief of staff role, I think it is, I know for a fact, it's the role I tend to step into very often because I see a strategy and I want to see it come to fruition. Like I keep using that word. A lot of times leaders are visionaries, right? So I would say like one of my first bosses where I played this role, he was an amazing visionary. And then he was running so fast, like he dropped the idea on us and then he's running. And I'm like, but hold on a second. And I always found myself coming back around and being like, okay, here's your idea. We need to do a little bit more with this. We need to communicate it more. We need to make sure that everyone understands it. And he'd be like, all right. And so I started seeing a pattern in leaders like that, and I'm like, I enjoyed like, okay, I'm going to do the repetition to make sure that we can, accomplish what we want to do.
I think that's so interesting. And as you're talking, I see my visionary leader that I'm working, that I have been worked with several times. And it's like they have this I call it Tasmanian devil. They go here, you'll get all this. It's like, wait a second, we just got to start cleaning things up. And it's so interesting that is, for some people may feel like, hey, I'm not that person. That visionary person may be the one that's highlighted. But there's also a major work to get those visions off the ground, to put some tangible work in there. And I really want to highlight that because we have some listeners that listen to the Serving Second podcast and say, well, because I'm not the leader, I don't necessarily am not as valued. But what I'm hearing you say is that value and skill is actually what makes that leader, that the win to the kite for that visionary. I think that's really important.
Absolutely. I think, um, everyone brings different skills to the table. And, yes, you should have balance. You should be able to do a lot of different things, but everyone has different skills. And when you can bring that team together and rely on those different skills, that's when you're going to be successful as a team. And that chief of staff, that number two, really is the one that's carrying the weight often. And, every CEO, every leader that I worked with that I supported them in that capacity, they will tell me, "I don't know what I would have done without you because you were the." I mean, I literally had one of my bosses was like, "Listen, can you just follow me around and write
Yeah.
down everything I say because I'm gonna forget it and no one's gonna do what I've asked them to do, but I know it's important."
Hmm.
So that follow-up, that clarity, providing clarity, making sure that people understood what's been said. Because when you're that number two, you're hearing the message more than once. You've heard it the first time, the second time, the third time. So when someone else doesn't know, then you can say, "Hey, let me sit down. Here's what I heard. Here's where it landed, where it didn't. What are your questions?" And then you can also act as that person to go back to the leader and say, "This is not landing. I know
Mm.
you said A, B, and C, and they're hearing A, C, and D." So
And
you're interpreting that.
yeah, no, I really love what you're saying because you have an opportunity to reframe the vision. And so you're hearing it from one side and you're disseminating it. And then you can kind of clarify, okay, is this really, is this really what you want in real time? And going at providing that clarity. And I think that's so important. I have a friend of mine, Seth Elorda, who deals with vision clarity. And they're like, if the vision is not clear, if it's not focused, then it can literally go off the rails. And I think those conversations are so important. But there's one thing you mentioned I kind of want to circle back to, and you're talking about what we tell ourselves. What is in your journey that kind of lie that we tell ourselves about leadership that you really, hey, this, if we got this, it'll be a little bit easier. How do you navigate that when we tell ourselves about leadership?
One of the things for me is that leadership is an either or choice. You either deliver results or you take care of your people. And I think so often we get caught up and we're like, have to deliver the results. We got to do this. And we're like, we'll take care of the people after the fact. And one of the things that I've learned in all these years and being in this position of that second position is you need to do both. And you actually get your results by caring about your people. So it's not an either or, it's a both. And you can't wait to do second of taking care of your people.
So in real time, if we have a leader, we're talking to a young manager that's serving in the second chair role, what would a real day look like for them to kind of motivate the people while not also angering or not disappointing the person that they're serving in that first chair role? What is that? What would that look like?
You mean so how do they keep following up and getting this stuff done? And
Yeah, how do they do it? And well, let me say, how did you do it and be able to do it with a smile? Like, I see the way you come in, but they have a there's a no nonsense way about the behind the smile, I'm sure. But how do you do it and still care about the people, but understand that you're serious about getting the work done?
it starts with clarity first and foremost.
Mm.
Knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it, right? And being able to explain that role to other people, right? So if I was tasked, if we had a major initiative going on, right? We needed to um, implement a new system, right? What I would need to know is understand the what, the why, and the how we're going to do it. Then my job there is to be that person that continues to follow up and interpret it and translate it for everyone involved, right? So, what's your I call it with them. What's in it for
Mm.
me,
Okay.
right? So, what motivates you and what motivates Bill and Mary are very different things. So in that number two position, you have that opportunity to build relationships with everyone else. And as you build those relationships, you learn what's going to get you excited, what's going to get the next person. You also learn what's their fear, egos, uncertainty, and doubt. I call that the feud. right? So when you understand what people's feud is, again, you can adjust the message, you can tweak it so it's going to land well with everyone. And that's that number 2 role is you're taking this brilliant vision and then translating it to land with each and every person that needs to hear it, needs to understand it, can get behind it, can buy into it, and know what their role and responsibility is to deliver on that. See, that's where I think it's the greatest leadership space
Mm.
because often you don't have any direct reports. And so now you have to influence without control. And that's a really hard position to be in. So now you truly have to build trust, build relationships, be vulnerable, and be someone that people want to come share with you,
So,
right?
okay. So as our folks are taking notes, and I'm here now, the first term you said was a whiff 'em. What's in it for me? And I got to understand what that means for the individuals that you're serving. And there was another term I want to make sure you said it. I want to make sure we say it one more time. What's in it for
Feud,
me? And then there
feud, fear,
feud. Okay.
ego, uncertainty, and doubt. A lot of people know FUD. I put the ego in. So fear,
Mm.
ego, uncertainty, and doubt, the feud, because those are barriers for someone to engage and really help work with you rather than working against you.
So what is something that you did to kind of pull that feud out of those individuals for the people that you work with? What were some tips or tricks that you did when you're kind of connecting with those folks that were on your team?
Yeah, the first thing I do is coach people, and because this is what I did was know yourself, right? You have to understand who you are and how you show up. Right. So, one of the things I learned about myself is I'm a driver. I have a lot of red energy. I run to the fire. I get things done. And I learned that that doesn't come across well sometimes. If someone has the opposite energy, I call it this is a clarity 4D type thing. But if you have green energy where you're more introverted, you're more heart based, I won't get along well with that type of person unless I built a relationship. So I would tell people like, listen, this is my natural tendency. When there's a fire, you want me around because I'm running to the door to make sure we all get out. But I do care. And the reason I push is I care so much. So I'm a nurturing driver. So I start with myself to let people know my idiosyncrasies, right? So if I get stressed, I might become a little bossy, right? But that's okay. You can call me on it. And so I would give them insights into who I was and how I like to show up, how I like to work. And then I would ask them, well, how do you like to work? What is best for you? So now we could have a conversation. And if I'm someone that loves to pick up the phone and call, and I'm dealing with someone that only wants email, if you don't have that direct conversation, there's a
Mm.
mismatch, right? You're irritating that person by calling them. Oh, here she calls me again. So it was building that relationship, and I think it all starts with yourself first, knowing what you like and respecting that it doesn't land the same. And so once you can start to say, "Oh, wait a minute, not everyone's like me," because by the way, there's no two people alike, right?
Okay.
But then learning about them, and I call it the platinum rule. You've heard of the golden rule, right?
Yes, ma'am. Heard of the golden rule. Teach us
So
about the
treat
platinum rule.
everyone. The platinum is treat everyone the way they want to be treated.
Mm.
Because if I treat you the way I want to be treated, then I'm going to pick up the phone and call you. I'm going to talk very fast pace. I'm going to be driving ahead and I've left you behind.
Mm.
Right? So I need to understand how I can connect with you so that you're on board with me and that you're going to join me on this journey and I'm not just trying to push you in the direction we need you to go.
Listen, Kathy, we can stop the podcast right there. Like just understanding the platinum rule. And as you're talking, I'm like, man, that'll work with my wife. That'll work with my kids. This is more than just, the leadership at the office. But I love the fact because so often we think about, man, I think I would love to have this, or I would love to have this type of, and I'm not a gift person. And there are people who just give gifts. And for me, if I treated people like me, they wouldn't get anything, but they were like, he doesn't love me, but I'm here every day. He's supporting you. But the idea of the platinum rule says, how can I love that person the way they want to be loved,
Exactly.
and,
Yep.
and
You
work with
actually
that
had a
person.
guest on recently that was talking about the 5 love languages.
Yes, 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 I did.
That comes into this play, like, knowing what someone else's love language is, and that maybe a relationship I forget
Gifts,
what you and
language. It was 5 languages of appreciation. Yes,
that's the one, right?
yes.
And understanding that is so critical to influencing someone whom you can't tell them what to do.
Hmm. But you also said something I really just kind of I don't want to kind of fly past. You mentioned being able to know yourself. And I love what you identified, not just intellectually knowing this is who I am and what I like, but when you're able to share, hey, when I get angry, when I get things get hectic, I do this. It doesn't mean it's not anything against you, but this is who I am. And you allow people to have that hey, have a conversation with me. If I'm coming off a little too strong, do that. And I think that's so inviting, particularly for somebody who can sometimes be perceived as a authoritative figure or somebody that's quote unquote above them or on a different playing field as them. They're able to identify, okay, when Kathy gets upset, she still loves me. We're still trying to work together, but it makes a difference in how I communicate with her. And that at the end of the day, that vision goes back to the vision. How can we get the vision done and mission accomplished?
Well, and let me take so there's an exercise I do with clients and people I work with and anybody on my team. It's called the E3 leadership profile, which is about that self-reflection, who you are, what are your values, what are your non-negotiables, how do you like to show up, how do you like to work with others. And I had a CEO that I worked with one time, and he trusted everyone immediately. He started from a position of trust, which is amazing, right? You're like, "Wow, that's an incredible." But do you know how many people didn't trust him?
Mm.
Because they're like, "Oh, no one does that. I don't believe that," right? Like, it wasn't
It's too good to be
natural.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we had him go through the exercise of sharing it then with the team and say, "Okay, here's the thing. I do truly trust immediately, right? That's first and foremost." He goes, "However, if you ever cross me, then you go into "I don't trust you" category, and then it's really hard to get back into the trust category. So now everyone went, "Oh, so he really does trust. I gotta be careful to stay over there." But it wasn't until he shared it, and verbalized it, and they all understood that that created that conversation and built that relationship then to work together.
Wow. So this idea of E3, was that something you created? If so, can you just break down just one more time? Again, I'm slow. I try to say I'm still learning and just everybody can learn at a different pace, but that E3 experience, how does that navigate and how does it impact, especially when pressure spikes?
Yeah, so the E3 leadership code really came from all of this experience of influencing change and driving projects, and trying to get people on board with something. Because before I give you the code and the definition of it, Toussaint, there were a couple of numbers that stuck out for me.
Hmm.
21% of employees are actively engaged in their job. That means 79% are not actively engaged, don't necessarily want to be there, are not giving their all. And that means you're leaving productivity on the table, efficiencies, innovation, you pick it, across the board, not happening. So that's first number one that I was thinking of. Second was less than 30% of individuals, teams, and organizations actually accomplish their goals. So that's a big number, and I'm like, "Okay, these 2 have to be related," right? Low employee engagement, low, success rates. So what's happening? So I started looking at every project I was involved in and what succeeded, what didn't. I started talking to other leaders, and we started talking about what are those things that drive success, and there is a system to it, and that's what became of the E3 leadership code. So you need to have all of these elements to succeed. So first and foremost, you need to express the end vision. So it's E3, right? So express
Hmm.
plus engage plus execute, powered by emotional qualities.
Express, engage. What was the third one?
Execute,
Execute. All right.
yep, and all powered by emotional qualities. So you're going to love this as a number 2. So express and vision. We talked a lot about that already. Where are we going? What we're doing? We need the vision and we need the why. We need the purpose behind it, right? Because that's how you're going to then engage your people. So now you have this vision and you want to make sure it comes to fruition. So now you're engaging your people. And this is, you need the platinum rule, you need to understand the WIFM, the feud, all of this. But your goal is to engage everyone the way they want to be engaged. So they're bought in and they're doing more than just the bare minimum, right? That they're not just showing up to get the paycheck. Our goal as leaders is to inspire and enable our teams to do what we need them to do. Okay. So visionary leader, you've got the one that's out the bar, everyone's their best friend, right? We all know those leaders as well. We also know the leaders that are really good at operations. They know how to deliver, but some of those folks actually leave people out because they don't have a good vision, they don't engage people, they don't connect to their hearts. But the execution is really important as well. You need to have it because you need to have the rhythm. You need to go back to the basics on a regular basis. You need to make sure decisions are being made, that there's no bottlenecks, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff in execution that's a lot of work. And we need to make sure that all of that is being done because so many times these visions sit out there, people don't buy in, or if they do, then you don't go back to the milestones, you don't check things off, you don't celebrate the wins. And if you don't build trust. So those are the three, I call them the three legs of a stool.
Hmm.
Stool is only good if you have a seat. So that's the emotional qualities. And that's really the glue to all of this because that's being authentic. It's being curious. It's being courageous, inspiring and enabling. The personal side of things that we need leaders to show up because logic doesn't move people,
Hmm.
emotions do. So you need to have all of this. And if any project is falling behind, isn't executing, you can always ask these questions. Do we know where we're going and why? Is everyone engaged? Are we executing? Do we have a plan for execution? And are we connecting to the hearts of our people? I can guarantee you, if something's off the rails, there's something off in one of those four areas.
As you're talking, I'm thinking about a stool that's that one of the legs are a little bit shorter than the other, and you kind of get tilted, and you'll have that foundation. And I love that you have those three areas, those three legs, and then the seat there. Now, I'm just kind of trying to picture did somebody get this in your training session? How long would it take for an individual or an organization to get this and really grasp this concept?
So we have a boot camp. So it's a 5 session boot camp that we like to do where you can get the basics, right? We
Hmm.
actually have leaders go through the E3 leadership profile where they learn about themselves because that is one of the biggest lessons learned. What's your values, right? How do you like to communicate? So as they learn about themselves, they have to share it with other people and hear other people's profiles. We do a Clarity 4D assessment to understand your personality, your profiles. And then we talk about a lot of these tools, the express, engage, execute, and the elements of change, right? How to manage through the feud and use the WIFM and all of these tools. So it's a 5 week, that's the basics.
Hmm.
But one of the things for me that's really important is you can learn the basics, and a lot of leaders come through the course and will say, "Yep, nothing new." But every one of them is saying, "Ooh, I forgot about that."
Yeah.
Right? And so the key to leadership is doing all of this all of the time. And so often we get pulled away on a million different things. The pressure, how many different
Yeah.
priorities are coming at us at once.
Exactly. I'm thinking about my day today, and it's like, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah, so it's the repetition, and so the ideal scenario is really coming back, and I love to work with organizations where they'll do this as, really like a subscription model where it's
Mm.
ongoing. So you learn the basics, but then every month you're picking up a slightly new tool. So you're going back to the basics and adding a tool in it. Because leadership is never, never mastered. I learned something. I will walk away from this conversation with you today learning something, right? So as leaders, we have to know that we don't know everything, and we have to continuously refine our skills, invest in ourselves, and keep going back to the basics and remembering to do the basics.
As I'm listening to this, I'm thinking about, we mentioned earlier, you're talking about the platinum rule, and now we're talking about this E3 leadership core, and I want to make sure I'm saying it correct. E3 leadership
Code.
code. There's E3 leadership code, and these are critical. And as I'm kind of listening to what you're saying, we have a basic foundation that you can do for this 5-week boot camp, and then there's more of a subscription model where you can kind of come and connect with you and your team. Is it just for leaders, or is it for the entire organization?
That's a great question. It's for everyone, right?
Hmm.
I've done this with aspiring leaders, people that are not yet managers, because we talked about that number two seat, right?
Hmm.
Because oftentimes you don't have direct reports, but you have to drive change. And so understanding these basics is really important. I believe everyone can be a leader. Not everyone needs to be a manager and have people reporting to them, but I think everyone should be a leader. And so, yeah, I think it is absolutely applicable for an entire organization. And I look at it from a maturity model, right? You could
Hmm.
have one manager come in and say, yeah, I'm going to invest in myself and I'm going to be better. As you go up as a maturity level as an organization, ideally you want to have um, a standards, right? So a set of leadership standards in our system that everyone knows what good looks like. And
Mm.
so if this is that common language, the common way of working, then people can learn also through osmosis, right? So if someone hasn't made it through the boot camp, they can, oh, my manager is doing that. And then when you go through the boot camp, you're like, oh, got it. I understand what that manager was doing, right?
So it
But then it
provides some
goes up.
common language for everybody.
Absolutely. And then it grows as the organization when that becomes proficient throughout the whole organization. Now you're all working well together, and that's when you really create a high performing culture. Because if everyone is worried about showing up and just defining what good looks like, making sure everyone's engaged, whether it's your peers, whether it's your manager, right? Making sure you execute, have that accountability, and showing up with emotional qualities, it's a win win. Now you
Mhm.
have a competitive advantage because everyone is showing up in the same way and they're able to have the difficult conversations. So I don't have you ever read anything by Patrick Lexiconi, the
Yes, yes,
five
yes.
behaviors? You
Yes,
know,
ma'am.
he's got the five behaviors, and the first thing is trust.
Mhm.
And as an organization, you need to build that trust. And it really is from there you can have the difficult conversations. So if someone is expressing to me the end vision and I don't understand it, and I go, "Oh, you tried to express that, but I'm not bought in."
Mhm.
Now that leader goes, "Oh, you're not bought in. We have a problem. Let's go back and talk about this. What's it going to take for you to be bought in? What's your WIFM? What's your fear? What's your uncertainty?" Right? So you can have very open dialogues back and forth, and then people aren't taking things personally.
Kathy,
So
no, I love this because, when again, we started talking, when we initially started, I was asking, okay, what are some training methods for individuals that serve in that second chair, and people that serve in that second seat? And what I'm hearing you say is you have not only a product, but a system that takes individuals and takes organizations through this so that everybody speaks the same language, everybody's on the same page. We can raise that percentage from 20 some odd percent to raising it so that we can not only be bought in, but engage and energized with what's going on as far as our mission in our organization. Let me ask this. What is a way individuals can get with you? We've talked about it, you've heard about it here, but how can they connect with you to learn a little bit more about you if they want to take this coaching to another level?
absolutely. So the book is coming out, the E3 Leadership Code, A Human Approach to High Performance. So you can find that at kathyeastwood.com and find information about the book. You can also, there's a link there to E equals Y. Um, and so that would be the best place. Or LinkedIn, if you want to follow actively, I'm always putting videos up for best practices and new ideas.
And thank you. And I got a chance to check some of those out. And so I'm going to put this in the show notes, the email address, the LinkedIn connection. And Kathy, this has been special. One of the things I'm really passionate about is second chair leaders, people who don't always have that first seat. And what you're saying is really connecting to our mission here, that the mission I serve is bigger than my title. And I think that's so important as we're talking about learning, leading, and growing. And this E3 leadership code is one of those things. So family, you are listening, you've heard, you had opportunity to be a part of this special episode with Miss Kathy Eastwood. If I can get it out, it's been a long day. But listen, I'm so excited for you being here with us and just taking the opportunity to grow and learn. There's always something more we can learn in leadership. And as individuals that serve second, we just want to say thank you for sharing your journey with us. And we look forward to finding ways we can connect moving forward. Thank you so much. And God bless you for being a part of our time today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.